All right, we are back on the Andre Duke Show with Carter Smith. Carter, how we doing, man?
Good, man. Good. Another week. Just moving along, man. It's already hump day, Wednesday. Got a lot to talk about. Obviously, a lot going on today. But overall, been a really good week. Just going through the normal grind of the week, getting ready. We got a little bit of football on tonight. Got a little break from the Indians action, Indians Yankees. So taking the night to just watch a little football and chop it up with you and everybody else out there. So overall, man, real good week so far. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Can't complain. Just can't believe how fast this football season is moving along. To be
That's
honest,
insane, man. We're already like halfway through.
yeah, I just
It's absolutely wild. Feel
one of
like we were
those.
just getting ready for it to start.
Yeah, one
But
of those things. Also, whenever we're going 5 nights a week now, so
yeah, exactly. It keeps on rolling, man. But yeah, no, I mean, right now we got Western Kentucky versus Sam Houston on the TV. Big game, big game. Sam Houston favored. Western Kentucky's up 7-0 right now, I believe. So, uh, you know, it's Wednesday night football. How mad can you be?
exactly. Sam Houston is one of the schools that have some of the lowest NIL in the country,
Yeah, and they're 5-1, man. They're making it happen.
and then also
They're
we
the
have
they're the Cleveland Indians of college football programs. You know,
uh,
bottom five payroll, making it happen.
yeah, and then also tonight we have Florida International taking on UTEP. UTEP looking for their first win,
Yeah,
and
that
that
one
game
should be a
is
snooze fest.
going to be played in the Sun Bowl,
There you
a very
go.
very underrated stadium.
Yeah, for sure. Florida International should be able to walk away with that one, I would think. UTEP hasn't been good since Jesse Palmer was there. So, or whatever Palmer, one of the Palmers was there.
Ooh, we gotcha.
But anyways, I was hopping around, jumping around social media today. Some big news came out of college football, man. Middle of the season, making some rule changes. I saw this pop up, added it in late, but I want to share it with everybody. Obviously, we talked about it, and it's been well documented. The kind of loophole that Dan Lanning found to add an extra defender to his defense at the end of the game. Take the 5-yard penalty, but make sure they don't make a play downfield, and then run some time off the clock. So the NCAA came out today. They said they were evaluating it and ended up making a change to the rule. I'll throw it up on the screen here for you guys. Basically, the newer interpretation is after the 2-minute timeout in either half, if the defense commits a substitution foul and 12 or more players are on the field to participate in a down, officials will penalize the defense for the foul. And at the option of the offended team, aka the offense, they will reset the game clock back to the time displayed prior to the snap. And then the game clock will start on the next snap. If the 12th defender was attempting to exit the field, aka if he's running off and he doesn't get all the way off, then it'll be a normal penalty. I found this very interesting that they were so quick to make this change after Ohio State obviously had this work against them, because had they gotten that 5-yard penalty with 10 seconds instead of 6, and Will Howard runs for 15 yards and slides, there'd be probably around 4 or 5 seconds on the clock, call timeout, kick the field goal.
Well,
What are your thoughts?
okay, you closed the rule or the loophole. Congratulations. Well, does that put points back on the board for Ohio State for them to win the game? No. So,
Obviously not. Obviously not. No, not. But now here's where it gets interesting, I think, is how much you want to bet if there's even an inkling of a chance that Ohio State gets left out of the playoff. This rule comes into the decision making of the committee.
um, well,
And they
the
say, well, had that loophole been closed, who knows, right?
well, that's if ifs were a fifth, we'd all be drunk.
Yeah.
I just,
But I'm just saying that would be a reason that the committee is to say, well, my test, they're one of the best 12 teams. I know they have 2 losses. They maybe shouldn't make it in, but if this rule was changed prior, they might win that game. So we're going to give them a slot.
it would have to be a situation to where if Ohio State lost, let's say they lose to Penn State and they, um, lose another game, then I think it comes into
Well, yeah, it would definitely. I think even if they lose to Penn State, they probably can get in with 2 losses. If they had 3 losses, that would be where this definitely could come into play. This is funny. They have time to change the rules midseason, but can't pin that tail on the donkey up north.
Yeah, that's.
I think this one is a little easier to get done, a little less involved. But I agree, they're taking their sweet ass time throwing that gauntlet down on the scum up north. But yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it's a rule that hadn't been widely exploited, so they hadn't really thought about it, and then it came to the forefront this past weekend in one of the biggest matchups of all year, and so the NCAA felt like they had to try to do something. This is all irrelevant because the NCAA is going to be irrelevant in 5 years, so write all the rules you want. They're going to write a new rule book when they start the new league. But
I was asking somebody about the possibility of the new rules, and if they go to a super conference and they have one guy with the bully pulpit, he told me, careful what you wish for.
Oh, I agree. I don't disagree with that. Well, that's why the NCAA is stuck around as long as it has, is nobody wants to be in charge of writing that rule book. The NCAA already has one. I don't want to write a new one.
Yeah, I was just told careful what you wish for, because the big thing that some of the colleges or the universities have had in the past is they've had oversight, but at some point you will have we'll use a random school here. We'll call it Smith University. Let's say you're committing a whole bunch of recruiting violations and shit's kind of out of control, and you run a really tight budget to where you don't have a whole lot of operating capital at the end of the year left, because it takes everything to run every program you have. Well, whenever they come in and say, okay, you're running amok here, and we're going to fine you $50 million that you don't have.
Yep.
So I just think everybody's pushing. We're going to have a break off. We're going to have the playoff and the break off. And, the NCAA is horrible. I'm not saying the NCAA is great, but I'm just saying, you could get somebody that's like a Roger Goodell that's a total complete dictator, and and do you think it's bad now? And you think that people are having issues with the NCAA? Wait until you have one guy making the decision, and not to mention all your players have no labor agreement on what they're getting paid either.
I don't disagree. I think I do think that if it breaks off into that situation, there will be a players' union. There'll have to be some sort of labor agreement and everything like that. Like, that's just going to be part of the whole thing. But there's a reason Roger Goodell gets booed every time he walks up to the draft stage, right? He's the most hated man in football, and that's going to be somebody's job eventually in college football. And universities aren't going to like it. Presidents aren't going to like it. Athletic directors aren't going to like it, but it's either that or you stick with this system you have now. So it's what do they say? It's the better, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's why they've stuck with the NCAA this long. I just think eventually the money gets too big and there's too much going on that eventually something's going to have to change, because you're going to get to a point where over 50% of programs in college football can't keep up with the other 50% at least. And so at that point, you have to make a change. But neither here nor there. I like the rule change. I think it makes sense. You shouldn't be able to exploit rules like that. It is what it is. Ohio State shouldn't have put themselves in that position to where Dan Lanning could use a loophole like that to win the game. Shouldn't have happened, but at least they're tightening up the loopholes going forward. It is kind of weird to do that mid-season because you've already had half the year played with the old rule, and now you have a new rule, and that could potentially, impact future games, but not past. It's just weird. I don't like changing rules mid-season.
I don't like changing rules that never get exploited.
Well, at least they never do on like a prime stage. Like, I'm sure Dan Lanning isn't the first coach to do this. Actually, I know he's not. But it just got so widely broadcast because of the stage it was on that the NCAA had to take a look at it.
I just, how about don't be down at the end of the game?
Well, yeah, obviously. And that's what, like, Ohio State can't use this as an excuse because, like, they had every opportunity to win that game. So this is just one factor. How about make a tackle? That might have helped. There's no rule against tackling. So try doing that. Or don't get burnt 75 times. Or don't get an offensive PI call. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it is what it is. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can look at. This is just one of many reasons Ohio State lost that game. But it closes a loophole, so it makes competition more fair going forward, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, they came out, USA Today came out with the list of the highest paid coaches in college football, which I don't think this is news to anyone, but it was interesting to look at. I'll throw it up here. That way everybody can see it. I mean, as far as I know, this is pretty common knowledge, right? Obviously, you got Kirby at number 1, making $13 million. Was there anybody on here that surprised you?
Stoops.
I think that one is the one that probably surprised everybody. That might be the best gig in college football. Like, there's no expectations at the University of Kentucky. You can go 6-6 and nobody gives a shit. You can go 9-3, nobody gives a shit. You can go 11-1, people will get excited, but then the next year you go 5-7, nobody gives a shit. Like, it's a basketball school with a football hobby, but they're paying them over $9 million a year.
Well, I think Stoops is feeling the heat at Kentucky. I think they're turning up the heat a little bit. They want to have a little bit better expectation there.
I haven't heard that, but I mean sure.
I think if Stoops has a couple more bad losses, I think it gets weird there.
I mean, he's had a pretty good year so far. I don't think there's really much more he needs to do.
I don't think he's had that one. The worst loss he's had was
what, Vandy?
No, South Carolina. When South Carolina
you don't expect Kentucky to beat South Carolina. South Carolina is more of a football school. You don't expect that. Vandy, I would say, is the worst loss they've had, but Vandy beat Alabama, so you can make an excuse for that. Obviously, they got beat up on by South Carolina, but Kentucky's used to that. That happens every year.
I just think that they've invested a lot, and you're paying the guy $9 million a year, so you're investing resources into it. But I think Stoops overall is doing a good job.
And G said it right here. What he's done at Kentucky is absolutely impressive. There's never been a coach at Kentucky since I wish I remembered his name. Rich Brooks. Rich Brooks took Kentucky from bottom dweller to competitive. and then they went back down, hired Stoops. He's built it back up to where it is a respectable SEC team every year. They're not in the mix for SEC titles, but nobody cares. Like, nobody at Kentucky cares about that. Like, there's not a single booster or anybody that really cares if they're competing for SEC titles. Just go out and win 8 games a year. That's all we want.
Yeah, there's, I agree with Dabo and Kirby being top
Lincoln Riley,
two.
man.
Huh?
Making $10 million a year to be ass.
Who?
Lincoln Riley.
Oh, Lincoln Riley, yeah.
And Zach said it right here. Marcus better kick Lincoln's ass. I agree. And I think he will. I think Notre Dame is going to fuck USC up, if I'm being honest.
The issue you have with Lincoln Riley is that I don't know if USC is going to want to pay that buyout.
Yeah, I don't know. If Texas A&M's taught us anything, it's that buyouts don't matter. Everybody's got money. So the crazy thing to me, like, if you look at these top 5 coaches, one of them's not like the others, and that's Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley has never made a playoff. Or no, he did make a playoff at Oklahoma, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He did. You're right. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, they've all made playoffs. Dabo and Kirby, obviously, the only 2 active head coaches with national titles. Sark made a playoff last year. Lincoln's never made one at USC, so I guess you can make that argument. Ryan's made a couple playoffs, almost made the Natty, or did make the Natty in 2020. Norvell, you could argue, should have made the playoff last year. DeBoer, first-year head coach. Brian Kelly almost won the SEC his first year. Other than that, mid. Mark Stoops, not even close to any Big Ten or any conference championships or anything. Lane Kiffin, same, not even close to anything. Same with Drinkwitz and Heupel. I mean, it's amazing to me, some of the guys on that list. I mean, Brian Kelly obviously has the background with his time at Notre Dame to make that much money. He made the playoffs with Notre Dame. He did good things, so that makes sense. Stoops has been at Kentucky long enough and built that program into what it is. So I get that. Lane Kiffin has a name. Eli Drinkwitz is interesting, but I think that's just because they really wanted to build Mizzou into something. And that's why when I see his name pop up for other coaching jobs, I'm always interested, because he's making $9 million a year. Like, there aren't that many schools in the country that are going to pay more than that.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to the SEC schools, like Zach points out here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the top 12 are SEC coaches. My God.
It's
That's
just
insane.
It's just because, the Big Ten doesn't pony up for football.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously 2 Big Ten coaches on there, but the one that Lincoln Riley was making that before they joined the Big Ten, so I don't even count that. There's 2 ACC, and then the other 8 are SEC.
Yeah. Outside of Lincoln and Ryan.
Yeah. Obviously, Ohio State pays well. That's always, I mean, not always. Like, when Woody was there, he was making like $35,000 a year and never took a pay raise. But ever since Tressel got involved, they've been paying a lot. It just means more, literally. That's true. More money. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, like Zach brought up a good point. I didn't even think about the fact that majority of, I mean, I noticed it, but I didn't even like register to me how many, like, you don't have, like, Marcus Freeman's not even on the list, which he shouldn't be. He's a first-time head coach. I'm not saying he should be, and he obviously hasn't had the results Ryan Day had or Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, so I'm not saying he should be up there, but, like, Marcus Freeman's not on there. There's James Franklin's not on there. Jim Harbaugh would have been on there if he was still at Michigan.
Right.
But
here's a here's a fun fact for everybody at home. Count how many of those guys are Jimmy Sexton clients.
Well, I don't know.
Just oh yeah. So it just I don't know.
Dan Lanning's not. That's a good point too.
Yeah,
Dan Lanning is not on there.
I bet Dan Lanning will be on there if he wins the Big Ten. But
so you're saying he won't be on there? Gotcha.
He's got to win the Big Ten.
But so yeah, and here's a coach that's not on there, but is on the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year watch list, and I think this is really cool for a lot of reasons. Now, I will give you my take on his two biggest games here in a second, but Brian Newberry, head coach of Navy football, gets named to the watch list. I don't know this to be a fact, but I want to say it's the first Service Academy head coach to be on that watch list. I feel pretty confident in that. What are your thoughts on him as a coach? I don't know much about him. I looked him up when I saw this, and I got a little bit of his background, but obviously he's doing really impressive things at the Naval Academy right now.
Well, like we brought up the other day, there was, three ranked schools that don't use the transfer portal, and two of them are academy schools, and the other one's Clemson. So I think they've found something. There. The camaraderie, the togetherness. With the academy schools, I think that they have 100% buy-in. They believe in what they're doing, and I'm not shocked. That's what the Naval Academy is for. The West Point, building men, and
the academies are. He's doing a great job, and I dug into Army Navy today. They had a little conversation going in a group that I'm in, and so I dove into it a little bit. And I got to be honest with you. First of all, I hate to break it to everybody, but they're both losing to Notre Dame. That's just going to happen. So they'll each have one loss going into their conference championship game, assuming they both make it. And they still could play twice after that. They could play conference championship weekend and the following weekend. But when I looked at them and I watched some film on them and I broke down the stats and I looked at them, I got to be honest, Army's a much better team. I think Army is the better team, and I'm not 100% sure that it's that close.
Yeah, Zach makes a comment here about Kirk Cignetti.
Oh yeah, Cignetti, yeah.
At Indy, and I agree with that, but
he's got a couple big games coming up for him to seal it. I think if Cignetti is able to, A, he's got to beat Nebraska this week. B, he can lose to Ohio State, but it's got to be competitive. And then he's got to beat Michigan. If he does those three things, I agree. He's definitely up for it, if not walking away with it.
Well, also the wild thing is that, when it comes to fans, and I have a pretty good insight track on some certain things, not just because I live in Indiana. The Ohio State fans that were on our YouTube channel commenting about said you're goofy and we turned it off after you started talking about Indiana. Here's the thing with Indiana. Kirk Cignetti has buy-in. And that's
for sure.
And that's something you can't measure. And this isn't NCAA. And And
what do you? I mean, I listen to that guy talk, and I want to run through a brick wall.
And here's the other thing too. Out of major slides at major programs, Ohio State hasn't won one. You're one. You want to. You better be worried about the game that's in front of you, because going to Penn State's not going to be a joke.
No. I don't think anybody thinks it is.
So you can laugh at Indiana all you want, but I would not be taking the Hoosiers lightly, but also you've had 3 of your most loaded teams ever and lost to Harbaugh that has had issues with the forward pass. So,
Well, yes, but to be fair, I don't think anybody inside the Woody Hayes Center is taking Indiana lightly at all.
But I'm just talking as in fan wise.
Yeah, well, I don't care what the fans say. Fans can say whatever they want. Fans also told me they were going to beat Oregon by 100, and then they were the same guys that were melting down afterwards.
That is true. That is true.
I put very little stock in what fans think because they have fan glasses on. That's why you're a fan. I get it. I do it too. It's okay. I melted down after Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. I get it. It happens. I still think Marcus Freeman might need to be fired. We'll see. He's got a long way to go. But I will say, everything I see from Cignetti, I love the guy. Like, just the confidence, the fucking just the way he carries himself. Like, I obviously we showed on the show last night with Richie his comment when he's like, "Listen, all I do is win. Google me." Like that shit. Like, bro, the confidence to go in front of a reporter and be asked a question.
Zach's got a good comment here.
Yeah. Let's not talk about Indiana beating Ohio State in the 80s. I don't appreciate that, but as I wear my 1981 Big Ten title ring, but he just the confidence to go in front of a reporter and to be like, "Man, all I do is win. Google me, motherfucker." Like, yeah. Bitch, I don't need to answer to you. Go Google me. You'll find out who I am. And then I saw on Pat McAfee, I think it was today or the other day, they had him on. And he's talking about, because up until last weekend when Penn State beat USC and I forget who beat who else, but up until last weekend, there was only one Big Ten team that had won a game out west, and that was Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
Asked about it. UCLA, yeah. And he was asked about it, and he's like, "Yeah, so like, what did you do differently that week? Like, did you guys fly out Thursday and like get used to the time?" And he's like, "No." He goes, "Listen, I have all these guys that are logistics guys that are telling me like we could go out Thursday, get there this time, and then by the time kickoff." And he goes, "I told him no. I told him, listen, this is what we do for every away game. I'm not changing it. We're gonna get there as late as possible on Friday. I want to get there as late as possible because I don't want to spend a lot of time in the hotel. I want to get there late." So we got there like 8 o'clock, had a meal, had a meeting, went to bed. And he goes, that way we go to bed, wake up, play the game, and then we hop on a plane after the game and we're out of there. He goes, I'm not trying to spend a bunch of time getting accustomed and all that. He goes, so we got there at 8 p.m., had a meal, had a meeting, went to bed, woke up, played them at 3:30, kicked their ass, and got out of there. I was like, damn, like that's a guy I want to play for. Like, it's just the aura of that guy is like next level. So I love Cignetti. I love Indiana. I think Indiana is going to probably, I mean, I'd have to I've pulled up their schedule so many times. I should know this. But I know outside of Ohio State, I don't see a loss. I think they could win every other game.
I mean, if I sent somebody that I knew a message yesterday. I said, if Indiana goes 11-1, they're a shoo-in for the playoffs, and nobody is talking about that.
No, 100%.
Because they're Penn State.
Yeah.
Well,
Indiana doesn't play Penn State, do they?
No.
Yeah, so that's going to be that could be very interesting.
And you can't. How do you?
Let's run this real quick, right? So you got Oregon, who's undefeated.
Yeah.
Right. They don't play Penn State either, do they?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So Oregon, let's just. Their schedule. I can pull their schedule up right here. They have Purdue this week. That's an easy dub on Friday night. So let's pull their schedule up real quick. Yeah. So they got Purdue, Illinois, Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin, Washington. I don't see them losing any of those. So yeah, let's say they go undefeated just for the sake of shits and gigs, right?
Yes.
And then you have Ohio State that has the loss to Oregon. Let's say they run the table, so they beat Indiana, and then they're obviously going to beat Penn State and Michigan. So Michigan's already out; they've lost; they're done. But now Penn State has one loss, Indiana has one loss, both of them to Ohio State. So that would just mean Ohio State gets into the Big Ten title game.
Yeah.
If they run the table. Okay. So it's not that convoluted. All right. Good. That makes it easy. Now, if Oregon drops a game randomly, it gets a little fuzzy, I think.
Yeah. Also, a side note here, I just seen this come across the ticker. UCLA is going to honor Bill Walton at their I think their first Big Ten home game. They're going to honor the memory of Bill Walton against Ohio State, which is
In basketball.
Kind of neat. So
yeah, that's cool. Good for them. But anyways, yeah. So I mean, it gets interesting. But we obviously have talked a little bit about Ohio State. Obviously, the meltdown from Ohio State fans has been nothing short of epic.
real quick, let's reset the show here before we go to the next topic. Everybody out there watching on Twitter or watching out there on Twitter or YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. We're trying to grow this show, and if you are on watching on Twitter, come on over to the YouTube side of things, because we got quite a few guys in the chat tonight and get interactive. So we love taking questions, and our guys over here, Richie and Zach and everybody, come over here, and we like to have a good conversation about college football. So if you could hit that like and subscribe button and help us out.
Yeah, and we're gonna start doing something. I've been working on cultivating it, but we're gonna start doing some giveaways during the shows, live show giveaways for people that are in the chat in YouTube and stuff like that. So come join us. We'll give away some memorabilia, stuff like that. But also one thing I'm working on is I do want to give away a couple tickets to a game. So we'll do that in the coming weeks, hopefully. Just got to secure the tickets real quick. But I hope I win a hat. Richie, you want a hat? I'll get you a hat, buddy. But anyways, jumping into the next thing. Obviously, like I said, OSU fans have been kind of on a meltdown ever since the Oregon loss. And I get it. Like I said, I melted down when Notre Dame lost in Northern Illinois. So I am not immune to the meltdown syndrome. But the one thing you don't want it to do is impact recruiting. And I'm going to put this up here for everybody to see. If you haven't seen it, this is the mother of one of Ohio State's top recruits. Devin Sanchez, who's a 5-star 2025 corner, who's committed to Ohio State. This is his mom tweeting. And she doesn't mention anybody by name. But she does say no player should be attacked by their own team's fans. This changes things for me. Young man, keep your head up. One of the best players I've met in a long time. Now, I think everybody knows who she's talking about. But Duke, just in case they don't, who do you think she's referencing?
It's got to be Denzel Burke.
Yes. He plays the same position as her son. He got cooked on Saturday. He did get cooked. Now I've watched it. I've watched the All-22. I've watched breakdowns of it. It was not as bad as people thought. Just so I can put that out there. Denzel Burke is not a bad player. He's still good. He made a couple mistakes. He had a couple bad plays, but they were very, very highlighted because of the result of the plays and the moments and everything like that. But all in all, Denzel played an okay game. It was not his best game by far. He made mistakes, but he's been getting absolutely roasted on social media by Buckeye fans.
Well, here's the issue. Like Brian Adams said, it cuts like a knife, but the knife also cuts both ways. Some people might get mad at this, but I watched the All-22 film as well. I have a lot of questions about what we're doing on defense. Why are we rushing 3 a lot of times. Why are we dropping Jack Sawyer into coverage? It just was really bizarre, the things we were doing on defense.
Now, I will point out that the play you're referencing when they dropped all 4 D linemen into coverage, that coverage worked.
It worked, but
it's weird. I get it, but it worked. So can you really hate on it?
But can you really ask your corners to cover for 10 seconds every play and have 0 pass rush? Like I
would tell you to watch it again. They didn't have to.
The
ball's coming out quick.
I mean,
they weren't stuck in coverage for very long. But I agree, the pass rush was not getting home. But I agree with the sentiment of what you're saying. I agree. The pass rush needs to be better. That's the basis of what you're saying. If they had gotten more of a pass rush, the corners wouldn't have been on an island all night. Right.
And Zach makes a point here. This is part of what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
That is also the other side of it.
That's facts. That's why I see both sides. Now, I think, and I believe they said it on Menace to Sports when I was listening to them. Shout out to Zach and Chris over there. But I think there is I'm not saying don't criticize the kids. I'm not saying don't say they didn't play well. I think there is obviously a line with professional athletes as well. Like when you are a fan of a team and you're going as far as to threaten even professional athletes, you're crossing a line. Like it's unnecessary. It doesn't need to happen. Like you can tweet at them, "You suck," and that's fine. But when you tweet at them like, "I hope your mom and sister die in a car wreck," like that's not okay. I don't care who it is. And I'm not saying any of that happened. I don't have specific, but I'm just saying, like, as a fan base, hold yourself to a little bit higher standard. Understand that these are still humans. Even in this case, it's kids, but even if they're not kids, and now a lot of these athletes like Denzel Burke are being paid decently well money to play a game of football, right? Essentially. Yeah, gambling is a huge difference. And they have a whole campaign about that. Like, I don't care about your parlay. Like, that's fine. You don't have to. I'm still going to get mad about it. But these are kids. And even with professional athletes that aren't kids, that are grown adults, like they're playing a game. And they're paid very handsomely to play that game. But if it has such an impact on your life that you're wishing death upon somebody because they missed a kick, like, reevaluate your own life a little bit. Because, like, I get it. I want Ohio State or Notre Dame or whoever you're a fan of. I want them to win every game. And when they don't, I'm really pissed off. And trust me, as a Browns fan, I'm pissed off most of the time. But I understand that I can't go out there and tell Deshaun Watson to kill himself. Like, that's just terrible. Like, I don't care if he, like, and Deshaun Watson might not be a great example because of some of the off-the-field stuff. People might agree with me that he should kill himself. I'm not saying he should. But what I'm saying is when you start projecting that onto these people and being just over the top, it's like, all right, come on, man. Like, it's a game at the end of the day.
Well, here's the other thing, too. If you evaluate this to a certain extent, this is affecting recruiting now. You're affecting you're affecting your own product, and to a 17-year-old kid, they see what happened to Denzel. Oh, I don't want to go to Ohio State.
Yeah, and so that's what that's the other point of it is, like, if you claim to be a Buckeye fan or a Notre Dame fan or a Georgia fan or whatever, if you look bad as somebody that represents the fan base, even if you don't think you represent the fan base because you're a nobody, if you write something derogatory or grotesque enough that it gets the attention of the recruits, all of a sudden you represent the entire fan base. Even though 99% of the fan base is probably fine and they aren't saying anything, that 1%, the loudest 1%, the loud minority is what is going to be portrayed as what Ohio State's fan base is. And now you're an Ohio State fan, you want recruiting to be great, but now you're hurting recruiting and you don't actually play a role in the process. You're just hurting it to hurt it. But the other part of that is, and I would tell, yeah, exactly, G. Like I would never tweet at a kid, or I don't think I've ever tweeted at a player in general, whether it's professional or like, I mean, I might have tweeted at LeBron one time, like, hey, fuck you for going to Miami, but like at the same time, fuck him for going to Miami. But
I don't. Now, the only time I ever get involved is if they, tweet something just absolutely dumb. Or
I would never get involved with a recruit, which I'm not saying that the fans did in this situation. Obviously, that she just saw the hate Denzel was getting, and she was like, "Wow, that's really gross. That's a bad look." I would challenge her to also go look at every other fan base in America when they lose a game. Like, you don't think Jalen Milroe was getting death threats when he lost to Vandy? Okay. Have you watched Alabama's fan base? Or you don't think Georgia players were getting hit up after they lost to Alabama? Like, it happens every time. Like, especially at big level college football.
Well,
like, you're going to get that no matter where you go. So
also
don't hold it against one fan base. But
also now you've ran into the bigger problem is because Johnny from the Alumni Association is coming and knocking on my door and asking me for $400 a month to pay for NIL. And
I don't think that I honestly don't think that has much to do with it.
I think when people have their money invested into it, I think it means more.
I agree with you. I think the people that actually invest their money aren't the same people that are tweeting at these kids.
Mm-hmm.
I can promise you.
So,
because if I was financially invested in a program, first of all, I'm probably somewhat successful and level-headed. The people that are on Twitter doing this are trolls. They're not giving money to the NIL. Get out of here.
And that's also my thing too, because Ole Miss lost to LSU, and like you have Johnny in Tupelo that's never gave $1 to any NIL or even been to a game, but he's gonna say, let's fire Lane Kiffin. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, and that message board genius that I send you posts from, it's always a fan base melting down. It's like meltdown alert, #fire everybody. And some of the things that people put on those from all over fan bases, if you're not following that account on Twitter, it's a must follow on Saturday. Because sure. You could be watching a game and the team could be winning and their fans are freaking out. Alabama has been on there. Ole Miss has been on there. Everybody that has a lot of things invested. Like, there was people that wanted to fire Kirby Smart. So,
and maybe Kirby Smart should be fired. 2 natties in 8 years or 9 years. I mean, that's embarrassing, man.
Here's the other thing. Here's one last thing too, is like, the Saban standard is not everywhere.
You got to get past that, guys. Every school, you got to get past that. You understand that was the standard for one school for a very short period of time ever, right? Like there's no other school in the history of college football that has had that kind of run over that short period of time. It's never happened before. It'll probably never happen again. So comparing yourself to the Nick Saban era at Alabama is a quick way to fire a good coach.
Oh, yeah. but like I said, message board geniuses or gurus or what it's
Especially
called.
when you're at a school that's never even been close to that. Like when you're at Ohio State, Georgia, that have competed for national titles consistently, won national titles consistently, I can understand why you'd want to elevate the program to that level, but you have to understand that's not realistic. It wasn't realistic at Alabama. Like it happened, and the reason Nick Saban retired is because he couldn't maintain that level. Like it was never going to happen again, and he didn't want to be mediocre 60% of the time, so he got out. And now we're watching it happen with Alabama. Caitlin DeBoer is going to take a minute to rebuild that program, and he doesn't have to rebuild it for much.
It's just, I think that the infrastructure's there. A lot of things are in place. It's just that, Alabama lost a lot of kids in the transfer portal when Saban retired.
They sure did.
So I don't think fans, especially their fans, want to.
Well, their fans are so spoiled that it's going to take them a minute. They're going to have to be humbled, and they will be. I mean, they already kind of have been by losing to Vandy. And when they lose this week to Tennessee, they'll be humbled again. And then when they lose again to Texas or to whoever, they'll be humbled again. Like when they're a 4-loss team this year, they're going to go, okay, going 11-1 every year or 10-2 and being in the playoff every single year, like that's not realistic. That was special.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just what it is. Who doesn't? I want Coach Klein.
So,
but last thing I'll get to in social media, we spent a lot of time on this. There's just been a lot going on. And then we'll jump into some Notre Dame talk. And then tomorrow night, Richie and Duke will be back. So if you are listening on Twitter or wherever, just hop on the YouTube, like and subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications, all that yada, yada, yada. Like I said, we're going to start giving out some stuff for YouTube subscribers and people in the chat and everything like that. Get some memorabilia, some tickets, whatever it is. So make sure you hop on. We're trying to blow this up before the end of the year. And then last thing I got here, and this is just close to my soul, man. And it has a little bit of relevance into what we're talking about because he's an SEC guy. We were talking a little SEC football, but I don't know. Did you read Nick Chubb's letter that he wrote in the Player Tribune?
Not all of it, but I did.
If you get a chance, everybody out there, go read it. First of all, it's an incredible letter. I don't know if he wrote it. I mean, it doesn't matter if he did or if he just told it to somebody and they wrote it. It's well written. But it really runs through kind of his background, his lead up to the NFL, kind of his time at Georgia. Obviously, the reason for the letter is he has been activated. He's going to play this week against the Bengals. He's going to be the reason the Browns beat the Bengals because guess what? That's what the Browns do. Joey B sucks against Cleveland. I'm sorry. I love Joe Burrow. He just can't beat Cleveland for some reason. So Cleveland's going to get their second win of the season, maybe the only other win they get all year. But Nick Chubb's coming back, and he was asked, or he wrote a letter about kind of his process of going through this second catastrophic knee injury to the same knee that he injured in Georgia. And I just want to put this one piece up there because Cleveland gets a lot of hate for the organization that they are. And the Browns get a lot of hate for kind of some of the stuff they do. But to me, this is the definition of a class organization, similar to what the Steelers did with Ryan Shazier. And so I'll put it up here and so everybody can see. But this is just the guy. So he was talking about how he had it's right here. So agent called him, said, never actually had a front office tell me anything like this, but they said part of the reason they never entertained cutting you is because of how much you meant to the city. This meant the world to me. Look, I know the deal. He had no guaranteed money. The Browns had all the leverage. They could have left me high and dry like so many guys in this league, but they had my back. You, the city of Cleveland, all had my back. That's enough talking for me. There's only one thing left to do now. I got to pay you back. Bro, when I read that, in addition to everything else in the letter, Bro, chills.
It just the Nick Chubb thing, it's like, the Cleveland's actually handling this situation right for once, which is
exactly
good.
Which is crazy. But I think that speaks, because I know people hate on the organization because they've made a lot of bad decisions over the past 30 years. Get that. I will say I think this ownership group is different and has been since the jump. I think they made mistakes. Obviously, the Baker Mayfield situation is now hindsight's 2020. Doesn't look like a great decision. Obviously, Deshaun sucks. But I think they do try to do right by the guys that are there. And Nick Chubb absolutely means everything to the city of Cleveland. It goes Jose Ramirez, Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, in that order. And I think Myles Garrett might be ahead of Jose, to be honest with you. But Jose took a team-friendly deal. We love him. But the thing is and just his attitude about everything, man. If you guys, I promise you, go read the entire letter. It talks about his upbringing. It talks about his time at Georgia. It's going to be a well worth the read. It's a little long, and if you walk away from that letter and you don't absolutely love Nick Chubb, the human, there's something wrong with you. That's one of the best people I could ever imagine. And he is where he needs to be. And I'm so ready for him to come back. I hope he's healthy. I hope nothing happens. And I just hope he comes back and finishes his career strong in Cleveland, man. It gives me – those are the kind of guys you root for. Like, I rooted for Shazier in Pittsburgh because he was a Buckeye, and then obviously the injury, everything like that. But there's certain people, it doesn't matter what team they're on, that I root for. Like Justin Fields in Cleveland or in Pittsburgh right now. I'll root for him till the day he dies. That's a whole nother topic we can touch on Friday. Fuck Pittsburgh for what they're about to do to him.
I don't really want to dive into the Fields thing too awful much, but I will say,
I'm sure you don't.
I will say this. In the event, like, Russ is not very – I'm not going to say Russ isn't very good, but –
he's not very good. That's an accurate statement, yeah.
I don't think that Tomlin, I think that there is a little outside pressure on him to play Russ.
All right, we'll touch on it real quick and then we'll get to Notre Dame because I don't want to stay too long tonight. But if that's the case, because that's what I have to think it is, there has to be some outside pressure for me that the GM, ownership, whatever it is, to play Russ. If that's the case, this has to be the first time in the history of Steelers that has ever happened. Which makes me think it's not the case. Because, like, they've never done that before. They've always allowed Tomlin to do his thing. And so, like, if they're dictating to him now, when they're in first place in the division, he's thrown for 1,400 yards, has 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. Like, he hasn't been bad. The offense hasn't been great, but that's not all on him. You guys can't run the ball to save your life.
So that's a lot of things to me point to where the Russ talk gets stirred up, but also when it comes to the Russ stuff, Tomlin also plays with the media a lot too. If you watch his press conferences. Yeah. Because there's if you go look at a Pittsburgh media, like his press conferences, it looks like he's speaking at a Star Wars convention. I'm not joking.
So do you think they're not going to start Russell and they're just giving him number 1 reps for no reason?
I think they want to see if he's healthy. I think that's what that is.
Okay. All I'm saying is if Russell Wilson starts Sunday night, I am a diehard Browns fan. I have hated the Steelers since the day I was born. Okay. You will never see anybody root harder against the Steelers than I will Sunday night if Russell Wilson is a starting quarterback. That would just be absolute. That's it. I'm out. And I hope they trade Justin Fields to Miami and he goes on and wins a Super Bowl or something.
Well, it's just, I think that's what I really think it is. I think that Tomlin is playing with the media and the reps in practice. Devin Brown was getting 1 reps at
Okay.
Ohio.
Oh, he
I'm
was
just
splitting.
saying.
He was splitting 1 reps in the spring. That's a
That,
lot different than taking all the 1 reps in game week.
no, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
just because somebody is with this group of people does not mean that, they're going to make the change.
Well,
And
in the NFL, the starter takes the 1 reps,
but
especially in season.
But I also think that, they could give Russ a series or 2 and Tomlin will be like, "Yep, there you go. There you go, Omar. You seen it."
Maybe. I'm just saying, man, if they make the switch to Russ, I hope they lose miserably. And I hope it's not even close. And I hope Justin Fields just says, fuck you, and doesn't play.
Oh, I think it would just be hilarious on so many levels that if they bring Fields in, or if they bring Russ in, and because here's my opinion on Russ can't move anymore.
No.
And that
He's
is
old and broken.
That's the whole reason why Fields is fitting in the offense decent, is because he can move and help the offensive line. Russ can't do that. And
No.
I don't know if they have to put Russ in there to like this guy can't move right or left and he just got lit up. Okay, we got 15 yards, but the dude's got to be carted off in the body bag. Well, there you go, Omar. What more do you need to see?
He might be as immobile as Ben Roethlisberger's last 2 years.
I think Russ is worse.
Yeah, exactly. Without the arm.
And then also Omar was a big proponent of pushing to play Pickett, which I'm not a quarterback guy. I'm not a guru, as they would say.
Hands. He's got little hands.
I don't even think it had the hands had nothing to do with it. It just he couldn't play. And
yeah, I'm with you. But anyways, enough about the fucking Steelers. They suck. I hope they lose every game if they start douchebag.
First place in the division.
First place in the division with Justin Fields, but you guys are about to start some fucking Mr. Unlimited. So
yeah,
enjoy that shit.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get on to this Notre Dame game. We got a big one this week, boys. It is. I mean, this might be, I would argue, maybe the toughest game they have left. I mean, Army and Navy are going to be tough. Their service, they're always tough, and they're actually good this year. But outside of Georgia Tech, I mean, Florida State I thought would be tough. I don't think so anymore. USC I thought would be tough. I really don't think so anymore. So this might be the toughest game left on the schedule. And it's in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We got the Irish and the Ramblin' Wreck. And because of that, I have a little bit of a throwback for you. This is one of my favorite hits of all time. It happens to be a guy that I know pretty well. Went to Dublin Kaufman High School. None other than Chinedum and Dukeway himself. So I'm going to throw it up on the screen, and you can just watch this. This is Megatron back in his days at Georgia Tech against Notre Dame.
Boop. Ooh. They'd probably arrest him on the field for that now.
What?
They'd probably arrest him on the field.
Oh, absolutely. They would have arrested him, taken him straight to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. But that's my boy, Chinedum and Dukeway. Nadu, shout out. Number 18. We don't need to pull up the Ohio State film. We don't need to know how he did in that Fiesta Bowl. It's okay. We all forgive him. But that's one of my favorite highlights because he just lays Megatron out. And now, granted, Megatron's not looking like it's not like, but like he laid him out, man. And it's beat Yellow Jacket week. So fuck Georgia Tech. Fuck Chris Drew. Tell him I said it. But when we jump into this game, man, I'm going to throw some stats at you and get to it because I think this game is going to be really fun. Notre Dame's favored by 11, which is, I mean, it's right around where I'd expect it to be. Like I said, it's a neutral site game. It's not at Georgia Tech, but it is in Atlanta. So when you look at it, Georgia Tech's boasting the number 36 overall defense. They're giving up about 327 yards a game, 41st scoring defense, allowing 27.6 points per game. When you look at it compared to Notre Dame's offense, Notre Dame's offense has been talked about on this show more than anything in the history of the world, I think. They have the number 62 offense in the country, just over 400 yards a game, 26 scoring, though, averaging over 35 points a game. And then you look at the passing defense for Georgia Tech, number 82, allowing 223 yards per game. Their rush defense is really good, top 25 in the country on rush defense, which matches up nicely with Notre Dame's offense because Notre Dame's offense is a number 108 country. How bad you have to be a number 108 in the country at passing the football? Like, can we?
Hayes King, man.
No. Hayes King. That's Georgia Tech's passing offense. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm talking about Notre Dame's passing offense.
Oh, sorry,
they're number 108 in the country, 108th in the country, averaging just over 184 a game. That is almost dead last. Like, there's only 120 some teams. Like, you are almost dead last in passing. But tell me again how Riley Leonard's a good quarterback. Anyways, they do have the number 16 rushing offense in the country at 216.5 yards per game, which, again, Riley Leonard's a great running quarterback. They have a great rushing attack with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Prince and all those. So when you look at Georgia Tech's defense versus Notre Dame's offense, kind of matches up nicely. You have Georgia Tech, not a very good passing defense. Notre Dame, not a very good passing offense. Georgia Tech, pretty good rush defense. Notre Dame, really good rush offense. So it's kind of strength on strength there. But ultimately, the one thing that is interesting is Notre Dame has, the number 62 overall offense, but they have a top 25 scoring offense. So they're scoring a lot of points on offense, even though they aren't very efficient moving the ball. Now, when you move to defense and Georgia Tech's offense, the disparity is a little bit, it's about the same, actually. Notre Dame, number 11 in the country in total defense, giving up 270 yards a game. Top 10 in scoring defense, giving up just over 11 points per game. Georgia Tech, 32 overall offense, 444 yards per game. 41st scoring offense, 32.9 points per game. Notre Dame has the number 6 pass defense in the country. We'll touch on that in a minute because that is going to be tested. Now, Georgia Tech only has the number 59 pass offense with 240 yards per game. That's Haynes King. That's your guy. But they do have a top 25 rushing offense. And Notre Dame's rush defense is really where the breakdown is. Barely top 50, 121.3 yards per game. When you look at this game, so the passing defense for Notre Dame has been elite. I mean, almost top 5 in the country. The problem with that is you had a corner transfer mid-year. Benjamin Morrison's out, done for the year. And now you have a true freshman in Leonard Moore, who he is going to be the key to this game. Because if Notre Dame's pass defense slips, their run defense isn't great. They got a lot to clean up there, and there's a bunch of injuries on the D-line and everything like that have contributed. But if the pass defense can't hold up its end of the bargain, it's going to be a tough game for Notre Dame because Haynes King, although they aren't one of the best passing offense, he's been good in the pass game. He has over, He has over 1,500 yards in 6 games, I think it is. And so he's been good in the pass. It's just, it hasn't been consistent. And then when you look at third down, which I think third down is probably the most important stat in this entire game because you're going to have 2 defenses that are playing against complementary offenses. So forcing third downs is going to be key. Georgia Tech is 55th in the country in third down efficiency on offense and 28th in third down efficiency on defense. Notre Dame 79th in third down efficiency on offense at just 38.5%. Now they are top 10 in third down defense at just giving up 29.3%. But I'm telling you, man, this is strength on strength. You are going to get an interesting matchup. I like Notre Dame to win. I think that at the end of the day, the talent is going to outweigh everything else. But I think Georgia Tech covers.
Yeah, I think Tech covers the number with all the stats being said, but the problem that you have with Georgia Tech is how they've beaten mostly everybody is time of possession.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and look at their if you go back and look at their time of possession, it's the disparity is huge. And I think that's how they beat Florida State. If you go back to the opening weekend at Dublin, they have I think they had the ball longer than Florida State by 15 or almost 10 to 15 minutes. So when Georgia Tech can eat the time off the clock, it limits Notre Dame's possessions, and especially if you mix that with the turnover and they put together an 8 to 10 minute drive. Being down 14 against Georgia Tech could feel like 21 or 28. Brett Key, being a former offensive line coach, their offensive line can move people up front, and that is concerning if you're Notre Dame's. The Riley Mills being on the freak list, he better show up, and I think this might be the best offensive front that they can see all year, and
it's definitely. I think Army's is better, but yeah, I agree.
And you also have Georgia Tech raised $80 million in the offseason as well, so they are committing resources.
What's interesting, so I just looked it up because I was curious, because I agree. Now, Georgia Tech's time of possession in the Florida State game was outrageous. That's 100% why they won the game, on top of just Florida State being trash. But in average time of possession, Georgia Tech and Notre Dame are tied for 71st in the country with 30 minutes each. So their time of possession after the Florida State game hasn't been as good. That's why they've struggled more, obviously. But both teams have held the ball for almost, that's pretty much exactly half the game, 30 minutes, right? So it'll be interesting to see who wins the time of possession battle, because that could be a key swing in the momentum, because whoever's able to hold the ball longer, obviously, should have the advantage, barring turnovers, penalties, everything like that, because that's where games are won. But they each average 30 minutes in a game, so they're tied. But ultimately, I think it should come down to who's the more talented roster, because they're so close in a lot of the metrics that, like, turnover margin, they're very close. Time of possession, they're close. Penalties, they're close. Everything else that affects a game, they're very similar in. Notre Dame's a little bit better at generating turnovers. Georgia Tech's a little better at protecting the football. So, again, but ultimately, Notre Dame is the more talented roster. They have the more talented quarterback. They have the more talented running back. They have the more talented defense. Mind you, there are injuries on that defense that are notable, like Benjamin Morrison, Bobakar Traore. The list goes on and on. Same with the offensive line on offense for Notre Dame. So many injuries. So it's going to be an interesting game. And this is one that I've been very high on Notre Dame the past few weeks, and I've been right pretty much every week. Like last week, I told you I thought Notre Dame covers the 28.5, and they did. This one I'm not nervous about, but I'm more hesitant specifically on the spread. I think Notre Dame wins the game, But I think it might be a grind. It might be a tough game. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope Notre Dame blows them out. But that's just my feelings on the game going into it. I think Georgia Tech's a pretty good team. They're well coached. They don't make mistakes. They don't turn the ball over very much. They don't make a lot of mental mistakes in the penalties. So I think it's going to be – you're going to have a good performance out of all units for Notre Dame, including special teams, which has been a struggle.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then also on Friday morning, we're doing a show. It's going to be me and Carter Friday morning. So everybody out there, tune it in. We're going to go through more Georgia Tech stuff along with other games throughout, college football. Like we have Tennessee, Alabama this week. There's, tons of big matchups coming, and also college hoops is upon us. It's going to be barreling down as well as.
I'll make it real easy. We don't have to talk about college hoops. Kentucky's winning the Natty. It's done. Put it in the books. There you go. College hoops are done.
I'm sure those guys in Connecticut that have won it the last 2 years.
I don't care, dude. Come on, UConn, get out. I don't know if you saw this. All right, last thing real quick. If you haven't seen it, so obviously Mark Price is the head coach of Kentucky now, right? He was announced at Big Blue Madness, which if you don't know what Big Blue Madness is, Google it. It's the greatest thing in college sports. It literally is a practice at midnight, and they set up tents outside the arena to get tickets days before the event. Like, it's a practice, okay? And you have 28,000 people show up for a practice, okay? It is insane. But they had Big Blue Madness, Rupp Arena packed to the gills. Mark Price, first practice out there, and none other than Rick Pitino is there. Huh. And I have hated Rick Pitino since I was like 10, 12 years old. But he showed up in Kentucky blue, and they interviewed him. And immediately, man, I am so ready for Pitino to be the head coach of Kentucky. I don't even care. I'm ready. Hurt me again. Call me Michael Scott. Let's go.
Okay. On that note, please hit the like and subscribe button. To help us grow this show, we will be contributing $0.00 to the Rick Pitino Fund for being the head coach at
Speak
Kentucky.
For yourself.
At Kentucky. But with that being said, like and subscribe button. Me and Carter will be back Friday morning breaking down some more games. And then me and Richie will be on tomorrow night and going over some other stuff. And so with that being said, everybody have a good night. And thanks for tuning in.